On April 8, 1943, high above Cannes, France, Oberleutnant Rolf Gerdman couldn't suppress his laughter. Through the crystal-clear canopy of his Focke-Wulf 190A5, the veteran ace watched the ungainly American fighters struggling for altitude below. "Die Amis haben uns fliegende Milchflaschen geschickt," he transmitted to his wingman. "The Americans have sent us flying milk bottles." The objects of his derision were 16 P-47C Thunderbolts of the 4th Fighter Group, making their combat debut over occupied Europe. To German pilots accustomed to sleek Spitfires and nimble Soviet fighters, these corpulent American machines appeared almost comical. Barrel-shaped fuselages, topped with greenhouse canopies, wings that seemed too small, propellers that dwarfed anything in the Luftwaffe's inventory. What Gerdman and his fellow pilots couldn't know was that they were witnessing the arrival of the weapon that would systematically destroy the Luftwaffe's fighter arm. Within 18 months, these flying milk bottles would transform from objects of ridicule into instruments of terror, their .850 caliber Browning machine guns becoming the most feared sound in German skies. The Republic P-47 Thunderbolt had emerged from a June 1940 panic as German fighters swept across France. Alexander Kartveli, Republic Aviation's Georgian-born chief designer, received urgent specifications from the U.S. Army Air Corps for a high-altitude interceptor capable of matching the Luftwaffe's best. What Kartveli designed was a monster that redefined the possible. "It will be a dinosaur," Kartveli admitted to his design team, "but it will be a dinosaur with good proportions." The XP-47B prototype that first flew on May 6, 1941, shocked everyone who saw it. At 9,900 pounds empty, it weighed 65% more than its predecessor. The massive turbo-supercharger system, with complex ducting running through the rear fuselage, gave it an almost pregnant appearance. Test pilots invariably asked, "Does this thing actually fly?" Not only did it fly, it flew like nothing else at altitude. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine, an 18-cylinder radial producing 2,000 horsepower, could maintain full power at 27,000 feet, where German fighters gasped for air. The turbo-supercharger, fed by exhaust gases, delivered sea-level performance in the stratosphere where conventional superchargers failed. The mathematics of destruction were already loaded in those broad wings. 3,400 rounds of ammunition, a combined rate of fire of 6,000 rounds per minute, enough concentrated firepower to saw a Messerschmitt in half in less than 2 seconds. Major Hubert Hub Zemke, commanding the 56th Fighter Group training at Bridgeport, Connecticut, initially despised the aircraft. His unit lost 18 pilots in training accidents between September 1942 and January 1943. The P-47 killed more Americans in training than Germans would in the first months of combat. It ground-looped on landing, torque-rolled on takeoff, and dove with such enthusiasm that pilots discovered compressibility. Control surfaces freezing as shock waves formed on the wings. But those who mastered it discovered something extraordinary. Lieutenant Robert Johnson, a farm boy from Oklahoma, who would become one of America's top aces, described his first flight. "It was like strapping yourself to a locomotive. The power was unbelievable. You didn't fly it, you aimed it." The first combat encounters in April and May 1943 confirmed every German prejudice. The P-47 couldn't turn with the FW-190s, couldn't climb with the Bf-109s, couldn't match their nimble handling at medium altitudes. Luftwaffe pilots quickly developed tactics to exploit these weaknesses, attacking from below where the heavy Thunderbolt struggled, forcing turning fights where agility mattered more than firepower. Hauptmann Joseph Pips Priller, commanding officer of JG-26, reported to headquarters, "The new American fighter is meat on the table. It flies like a truck, turns like a train, and climbs like a pregnant cow. The boys are calling them Indiana totems, fat targets pretending to be warriors." The statistics seem to confirm German confidence. In their first month of operations, American fighter groups lost 14 Thunderbolts for only 3 confirmed German kills. The RAF, observing from their Spitfire squadrons, quietly suggested the Americans reconsider their choice of mount. But something strange was happening that German intelligence failed to notice. The P-47s that were shot down had absorbed incredible punishment before falling. One aircraft returned from a May 4th mission with 21 cannon holes and over 100 machine gun strikes, damage that would have disintegrated a Messerschmitt or Spitfire. The massive radial engine, lacking vulnerable coolant systems, shrugged off hits that would have stopped a liquid-cooled fighter cold. More significantly, when P-47s did get their guns on target, the results were catastrophic. Unlike the rifle-caliber weapons of early warfighters or the cannon with limited ammunition, the American fighter could maintain sustained fire for over 30 seconds, an eternity in aerial combat. The event that began changing German perceptions occurred on June 26, 1943, over Forges-les-Eaux, France. Second Lieutenant Robert S. Johnson's Thunderbolt was caught by 16 FW-190s from Tai-2 JG-26. In the first seconds of combat, 21 20mm cannon shells exploded across his aircraft. The canopy shattered. Hydraulic fluid sprayed into the cockpit. The engine cowling was torn away, and fire erupted behind the instrument panel. Johnson, wounded and trapped in his dying aircraft when the canopy jammed, managed to level out and point toward England. What happened next defied every assumption about combat damage tolerance. A lone FW-190 discovered the crippled Thunderbolt limping toward the Channel at less than 170 miles per hour. The German pilot positioned himself behind Johnson's P-47 and opened fire with all weapons. Johnson could only huddle behind his armor plate and pray. The Thunderbolt absorbed the entire cannon ammunition load. The German repositioned and fired again, this time with only machine guns. Still it flew. The German pulled alongside, staring in disbelief at the flying wreck. Johnson could see his face clearly, young, blond, his expression shifting from confidence to confusion to something approaching fear. The German fired once more, emptying his remaining ammunition, then pulled alongside again, shook his head in apparent amazement, gave an informal salute, and peeled away. Johnson's P-47 landed at Manston with its engine failing on the runway. The crew chief stopped counting bullet holes after reaching 200. One cannon shell had exploded inches from Johnson's head. Another had detonated against the armor plate behind his seat. 3 of the 4 main longerons were shot through, yet the aircraft had brought him home. The survival of Johnson's aircraft sent shockwaves through both air forces. German intelligence initially refused to believe it, No aircraft could absorb that much punishment, but testimony from multiple pilots confirmed the impossible. The Thunderbolt had taken everything the Luftwaffe's best fighter could deliver and survived. By July 1943, American pilots were learning to exploit the P-47's true strengths. Lieutenant Colonel Zemke had discovered the secret through brutal trial and error. Don't turn with them. Don't climb with them at low altitude. Use your weight. Use your power. Use your guns. The Thunderbolt's massive weight, initially seen as a disadvantage, became a weapon. In a dive, nothing could catch it. From 30,000 feet, a P-47 could reach 550 miles per hour, faster than any German fighter could achieve, even in a vertical dive. This speed could be converted to altitude in a zoom climb that left pursuing fighters helplessly behind. The true revelation of American firepower came during the August 17, 1943, dual raid on Schweinfurt and Regensburg. Major David Schilling, leading the 62nd Fighter Squadron, encountered Messerschmitt Bf-110 destroyer aircraft positioning to attack B-17s. What happened next demonstrated the devastating effectiveness of concentrated .50 caliber fire. The American fighters came down like hammers from heaven, recalled Unteroffizier Heinrich Roth, a gunner in one of the Bf-110s who survived. They opened fire at 800 meters. Good God, I watched our wingman's aircraft simply come apart. Not shot down, destroyed. Wings separated from fuselage, tails severed, crew compartment shredded into metal confetti. In 2 seconds, a Bf-110 became nothing. 8 Messerschmitt Bf-110s were destroyed in less than a minute. The German pilots had never experienced such concentrated firepower. Each P-47 carried 425 rounds per gun, 3,400 rounds total, weighing nearly 900 pounds. At convergence distance, typically set at 300 yards, all 8 guns' ballistic paths intersected in a zone roughly 6 feet in diameter. Anything in that zone faced 160 half-inch projectiles per second, each traveling at 2,900 feet per second. By September 1943, the Luftwaffe was discovering another horrifying reality about the P-47. Its performance improved dramatically with altitude, while German fighters suffered. The turbo-supercharged double Wasp engine maintained its rated power output up to 30,000 feet. German fighters, relying on single-stage or two-stage mechanical superchargers, saw their performance degrade significantly above 25,000 feet. Oberleutnant Hans Philipp, one of Germany's most successful aces with 206 victories, encountered this reality fatally on October 8, 1943. Leading JG-1 against a B-17 formation at 28,000 feet over Bremen, Philipp found his FW-190A-6 sluggish and unresponsive in the thin air. When P-47s of the 56th Fighter Group dove on his formation from 32,000 feet, the German fighters were sitting ducks. Robert Johnson, now an experienced combat pilot, was flying at 31,000 feet when he spotted Philipp's distinctive Focke-Wulf. His combat report was clinical. Open fire at 300 yards, 30-degree deflection. Observed strikes along entire fuselage. Enemy aircraft exploded. No parachute observed. Philipp's death sent shockwaves through the Luftwaffe. If one of their best couldn't survive against the Thunderbolts, what chance did average pilots have? In January 1944, a new variant began arriving in England that would complete the transformation from laughingstock to nightmare. The P-47D-22 featured a Hamilton Standard hydromatic propeller with paddle blades, 13 feet in diameter, with broad chord blades that bit into the air like massive oars. The improvement in climb rate was immediate and dramatic. Where earlier Thunderbolts climbed at 200 feet per minute, at sea level, the paddle blade variants could achieve 3,000 feet per minute. Hauptmann Heinz Knoke of JG-11, a veteran with over 200 combat missions, encountered the new variants in February 1944. He wrote in his combat diary, "The fat American fighters have learned to climb. We bounced a formation near Hanover, expecting our usual advantage. They turned into us and climbed with us. When we tried to disengage, they followed us up to 30,000 feet. Schmitt was caught and blown apart. Nothing left but smoke and fragments. These are not the same machines we laughed at last year." By March 1904, P-47s equipped with external fuel tanks could escort bombers deep into Germany. The standard configuration carried two 108-gallon wing tanks, or a 75-gallon belly tank, extending range to over 1,000 miles. With the paddle blade propeller providing improved performance even when loaded, Thunderbolts could fight on equal terms immediately after dropping tanks. The escort missions revealed another P-47 advantage: endurance. While German fighters operated at maximum power settings that consumed fuel rapidly, the big American radials could cruise efficiently at high altitude. Thunderbolts could remain with the bombers for hours, rotating top cover while maintaining enough fuel for combat and return. As more P-51 Mustangs arrived to take over long-range escort duties in spring 1944, P-47 units increasingly focused on ground attack, a role that would make them the most feared aircraft in the German arsenal. The Thunderbolt's heavy machine gun battery proved equally effective against ground targets. The standard armor-piercing incendiary ammunition could penetrate the top armor of most German vehicles, while the sheer volume of fire could destroy soft targets in seconds. The addition of bombs and rockets transformed the P-47 into a true multi-role monster. The D-25 variant could carry two 1,000-pound bombs under the wings and a 500-pounder under the fuselage, a bomb load equal to early war medium bombers. Later variants added zero-length rocket stubs for 10 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, each equivalent to a 105 mm artillery shell. On June 6, 1944, the Luftwaffe discovered how completely the balance of power had shifted. Over 500 P-47s provided air cover for the invasion, creating an impenetrable umbrella over the beaches. German fighters attempting to reach the landing zones were massacred. The final statistics of P-47 operations defied comprehension. In Europe alone, 3,752 German aircraft destroyed in aerial combat, 3,315 aircraft destroyed on the ground, 86,000 railway cars destroyed, 9,000 locomotives destroyed, 6,000 armored fighting vehicles destroyed, 68,000 trucks destroyed. The 9th Air Force, primarily equipped with P-47s, flew 213,873 combat sorties, dropped 120,000 tons of bombs, fired 135 million rounds of ammunition, and launched 60,000 rockets. Republic Aviation produced 15,683 P-47 Thunderbolts during the war, more than any other American fighter. At peak production, the Farmingdale factory completed one Thunderbolt every hour around the clock. Each P-47 required 65,000 individual parts, 8 miles of electrical wiring, 2,000 pounds of aluminum, and 300 pounds of rubber. Yet American workers, many of them women who had never seen an aircraft before Pearl Harbor, assembled these complex machines with precision exceeding peacetime standards. In March 1945, Oberstleutnant Josef Priller, the same pilot who had mocked the P-47s as pregnant cows 2 years earlier, was interviewed by German propaganda officials. His statement, deemed too demoralizing for publication, revealed the complete transformation in German attitudes. The Thunderbolt is the best fighter bomber ever built. Its firepower is unprecedented. Weapons that never jam, never overheat, never run out of ammunition in normal combat. It carries bombs like a medium bomber, fires rockets like artillery, and fights like a fighter when needed. But beyond the machine is what it represents: unlimited American production. They lose 10, they build 20. We lose one, it's gone forever. We laughed at them in 1943. We're not laughing now. When you hear those guns, you know death has come calling. The sound haunts us, mechanical, precise, unstoppable. Like everything American, it's about overwhelming material superiority. They didn't beat us through better tactics or braver pilots. They buried us under an avalanche of steel and lead. The P-47 Thunderbolt entered combat as an object of derision and ended the war as an instrument of annihilation. In between, 8 synchronized Browning machine guns rewrote the rules of aerial warfare and buried the Luftwaffe under an avalanche of lead. German pilots had laughed at the ungainly American fighter in April 1943. By May 1945, there were no German pilots left to laugh. The thunder had spoken, and the sky belonged to America.